Commander Rax stared through the viewport of his flagship, the Amaranth, as the swirling blue-green orb of Earth came into view. A small planet in a modest star system, overshadowed by so many other conquests the Luramir Empire had undertaken in recent memory. Officially designated as a pre-FTL civilization, Earth was labeled a trivial target, one that should pose no threat. And yet, Rax could not deny a faint tremor of unease running down his spine. It was an old instinct, one that had saved him before in unknown sectors of the galaxy. He dismissed it with a sneer, reminding himself that he was Commander Rax, victor of 27 campaigns, loyal servant to the Imperial Council, and chosen to lead a grand force of 9,900 ships. The mere mention of that number filled him with a sense of inevitable glory. He stood from his command chair and flicked his gaze across the main bridge. Dozens of Luramir officers worked diligently at their consoles. The soft glow of holographic displays lit up their scaled features, and the hum of advanced technology created a low chorus of efficiency. Each station had been fine-tuned for a species that prided itself on conquest, discipline, and unwavering loyalty. Rax's tail, covered in faintly iridescent scales, coiled in a satisfied loop around his ankles. "Status report," he said, allowing his voice to resonate with calm authority. Officer Trishar, tall and lanky by Luramir standards, turned from the navigation console. "We have achieved a stable orbit above the target, Commander. Preliminary scans show no FTL capability and minimal orbital defenses. They have a handful of satellites, but none that appear weaponized by our standards." Rax nodded. "And the rest of our armada?" "The fleet is in formation, sir," Trishar confirmed. "Nearly 10,000 warships stand ready to commence atmospheric penetration at your command." "Excellent," Rax said. "Begin with standard infiltration procedures. Launch the first wave of drop ships to secure key points of interest on the surface. Let them know we are here and that the Luramir Empire is prepared to accept their swift and total surrender." He added that last sentence mostly for effect, but it felt necessary. Earth was a small, inconsequential world, and the risk of losing more than a handful of vessels seemed remote. If anything, this conquest would be remembered only as a footnote, just one more system bent beneath the Empire's claw. Yet there was that disquiet in the back of his mind. He dismissed it with a wry twist of his lips, thinking perhaps it was the effect of having so many ships under his command. The Empire had never before deployed such a massive force for a pre-FTL civilization. Many among the Imperial ranks had questioned the logic of it. Still, the order had come from the Council itself, citing unpredictable factors and the advice of certain strategic predictions. He settled back into his chair, crossing his arms. "Tell the ground forces to move out. Show me the moment they begin descent." Officer Trishar gave a curt nod. "Right away, Commander." At another console, the science officer, Myra, was watching a bank of sensor readings. She was silent, but her emerald eyes glowed with deep curiosity. Rax had always respected Myra for her intelligence and her unwavering loyalty, but he also knew she had a habit of sniffing out anomalies and pursuing them. "Something interesting, Myra?" he asked, noticing she was peering at the readings a bit too intently. She shook her head, fins flaring gently at the sides of her face. "Just a few unusual signals, sir. Possibly long-range transmissions from their satellite network. It might be typical radio chatter, or it might be," she paused. "Well, it's probably nothing, but I'll keep monitoring." Rax gave a satisfied hum. "Do that. I expect full clarity in case these Earthlings attempt anything unexpected." Myra nodded, returning to her displays. It was customary for the Empire to broadcast a universal, wide-spectrum demand for surrender. Rax considered it, but concluded there was no point in sending it before establishing a firmer presence on the ground. The humans would learn soon enough that a force of nearly 10,000 starships hovered above their atmosphere, overshadowing the sky. "All stations," he announced, "commence Wave 1 deployment. Let's make this quick." A series of confirmations lit the screens, and the bridge fell into the disciplined hush of professionals. Rax felt the surge of anticipation, that familiar rush of soon-to-be victory. He had conquered so many worlds, but the thrill never truly faded. He glanced at the main viewer. The feed split to show images from the leading drop ships as they slipped free of the flagship's hangar and guided themselves into Earth's gravity well. Silhouetted against the planet's curvature, the invasion craft looked like silver shards flung toward unsuspecting prey. No hostility flickered from the planet's surface, no lasers, no missiles, nothing that might challenge them. "Commander," Trishar said, "we are prepared to initiate contact. The drop ships will land in approximately 20 minutes. "Good," Rax replied. "Alert me if the humans show any sign of intelligence, or at least any sign of resistance. I'd hate to think we needed all these warships for nothing." Trishar did not answer. He simply turned back to his console. Rax allowed the quiet to linger, savoring it before the show began. Suddenly, Myra's voice cut across the hush. "Commander, I've detected a spike in electromagnetic interference from Earth's surface. It's intensifying." Rax straightened in his chair. "Electromagnetic interference? Are they attempting to jam our signals?" "It's unclear, sir," Myra said. "The pattern is strange. It's as though they are sending waves at the precise frequency of our drop ship's navigation systems." "Impossible," he scoffed. "Their technology can't be that advanced. They're a pre-FTL civilization. They don't even have the energy capacity for such a maneuver." Myra didn't argue. Instead, she kept scanning, adjusting her instrumentation. "Commander, I'm reading some form of targeted disruption. If this continues, it could compromise the guidance of our drop ships." He felt that tremor of unease again. "Trishar, check with the first wave. Any sign of malfunction?" "Stand by," Trishar said, pressing the comm device on his temple. A tense moment passed. "Commander, I'm getting frantic signals from multiple drop ships. They're reporting a sudden loss of navigational control. Some are being forced off their trajectories." Rax's claws curled around the arms of his chair. "Force override from our end. Re-establish control." "I've tried, sir," Trishar replied, voice taut. "The override signals are not getting through. There's some kind of flood of mathematical code on our channels. I don't know how to explain it." Myra stared at her console. "Commander, we just lost contact with 5 drop ships. They disappeared from sensors entirely. Another 3 are in free fall." He growled, an involuntary hiss escaping his lips. "That's impossible. They can't have developed jamming systems this precise. They're barely advanced enough to broadcast radio waves into space. How could they intercept our quantum encryption?" No one had an answer. The screen showed the front line of Wave 1, hundreds of small craft descending gracefully, then chaos. Icons representing the ships blinked red, scattered off their vectors, and in some cases vanished as communications were cut. Officer Trishar threw a worried glance in Rax's direction. One feed stayed active for a brief, harrowing moment. It showed the interior of a drop ship, the pilot wrestling with unresponsive controls while the co-pilot shouted that their thrusters were firing in the wrong direction. Then the feed went dark. "Commander, Wave 1 is in disarray," Myra reported. "We've got collisions in the atmosphere, others spinning off into orbital debris. Some ships are heading back our way, out of control." Rax's jaw clenched. This was no ordinary planet. "Recall them immediately," he said, trying to maintain composure. "Every drop ship that can still respond, tell them to abort landing." Trishar hurried to comply, but then he froze. "Commander, I'm receiving an open transmission from the planet's surface." For an instant, Rax could only stare. "Show me." The main viewer shifted to a crisp, static-free broadcast. A human face appeared, female, with rich brown skin, cropped hair, and an expression that spoke of focus, not fear. Her surroundings were minimal, presumably some command center. But the quality of the transmission was what stunned him most. It was perfect, as if she stood in the same room. "To the Luramir ships in orbit," she said in flawless Luramir speech. "I am General Ariella Clark of Earth's Unified Defense Command. We are aware of your presence and your actions. We urge you to withdraw before further violence occurs. If you do not, we will take measures to protect our planet." Silence settled over the bridge. A few moments earlier, Rax would have met such a message with a mocking retort. Now, with his first wave decimated or lost, the conversation felt disturbingly unbalanced. He clenched his teeth and forced a sneer. General Clark, you speak our language well for a species that has never ventured beyond its own star system. How did you acquire our tongue? She did not blink. You are not the first Luramir vessels to appear in this system, Commander Rax. We have been preparing for this day for many years. Her use of his name sent a prick of alarm through him. That's impossible, he growled. You may have stolen a few signals or spied on a stray scout ship, but you cannot hope to withstand the might of 9,900 warships. The corners of her mouth tightened. Then let this serve as both warning and demonstration. We do not wish to destroy you, but we will defend ourselves. I strongly advise you to leave Earth's orbit before more of your people are lost. Rax pounded his fist against the console. You dare threaten me? But Clark's image vanished from the viewer. It was replaced by the swirling chaos of the wave's remains. Out of 300 drop ships, they had confirmed the survival of fewer than 100. It had taken only minutes, and the humans had not fired a single conventional shot. Rax rasped out an order. Pull back. Prepare the second wave, but they will not enter until I say so. He paused, trying to steady himself. A pair of red status icons flared on his screen, indicating drop ships crashing, one after another, somewhere in Earth's oceans. He forced his breathing to slow. Myra, gather all data from the drop ship's logs. I want to know exactly what technology they used against us. She nodded, her voice subdued. Yes, Commander. Trishar whispered from behind. What do we do now, sir? Rax exhaled a hiss. We adapt, and we remember that the Empire does not tolerate defeat. The next wave will be larger, more coordinated. We will lock down every channel they might exploit. They can't possibly outmatch us in raw force. They might jam or scramble a few drop ships, but let's see how well they handle thousands. He said this with forced bravado, but his mind still reeled. The Council's massive deployment order flickered through his thoughts. Perhaps they had known something like this was possible. The strategic committees had predicted that Earth might not behave like other pre-FTL worlds. Still, those predictions had pegged advanced weaponry or cunning alliances, not an ability to hijack Luramir's systems directly. Rax had no time to dwell on the bigger picture. The next move was his, and the entire crew was waiting. Set up the second wave, he growled. But we approach from the planet's night side. Their satellites will be less concentrated there. A flurry of activity spread across the bridge, and the second wave, larger, more heavily armored, prepared to descend. Rax watched the readouts intently, issuing orders to disperse the ships into smaller squadrons to avoid collisions if their navigation systems went haywire again. He ran a hand across the ridges of his brow. The large viewport still showed Earth's blue horizon, tranquil and unassuming. Anger and frustration boiled within him. Commander, Myra said, her voice soft. I've run a diagnostic. We believe the humans are using electromagnetic pulses combined with some kind of hyper-encoded signal to override our infiltration commands. The deeper question is how they knew our frequencies so precisely. Does it matter? He demanded. They can't jam all of us if we disperse widely enough. It's not normal jamming, she persisted. It's something more advanced. Our encryption should be impossible for them to break. And yet, Rax silenced her with a wave of his hand. We proceed, and this time we show no mercy. While the second wave lined up, his mind returned to General Clark's warning. We do not wish to destroy you, but we will defend ourselves. That quiet confidence made him uneasy. The humans must have had help, or else they had developed more swiftly than any pre-FTL species in recorded history. He smoothed down the front of his crisp uniform. Trishar, commence second wave launch. Maintain tight formation and keep an open channel for immediate recall. Yes, Commander. Watching the second wave slip into the atmosphere brought a fleeting sense of relief. This time, no immediate disruptions flared on the sensors. That was a good sign. The wave was split into smaller squadrons, each approaching different segments of Earth's surface under the cover of darkness. Even if the humans had advanced jammers, They couldn't be everywhere at once. Then Myra looked up sharply. Commander, there's a new energy surge from the planet's surface. Multiple sites around the globe. It's building quickly. Focus our scans, Rax ordered. Try to isolate the source. Within seconds, the feed from one of the lead drop ships switched to a live view. Through the thick blackness of night, there appeared to be large geometric patterns of light on the ground. Massive arrays of something glowing in shifting colors, like city grids reconfigured for a singular purpose. The pilot's voice crackled through the comm. Seeing something unusual, sir? It looks like the humans have restructured entire power grids. Electromagnetic readings are off the scale. Wait, losing control of... His voice cut out. The camera feed showed the dropship lurch violently to one side, as if an unseen hand had seized it. Another Luramir craft came into view, similarly veering off course. Then the screen went black. Rax clenched his fists. Report. Trisher's face was pale. We're losing the second wave, Commander. The same phenomenon is occurring. They've targeted our navigational arrays again, but from multiple ground-based stations. I'm reading collisions among our own ships. Some are plummeting uncontrollably. A wave of static washed over the communications array. Broken transmissions begged for help. Rax watched the icons on the tactical display flicker, turn red, and vanish. Fury pulsed in his veins. How are they doing this? He roared. Why are we not detecting a straightforward weapon signature? Myra's voice was strained. It's more like they're subverting our technology. We're seeing code that merges with our operating systems, forcibly rewriting commands. Even the best encryption can't stand if they somehow guessed or learned our base frameworks. Rax's tail lashed behind him. Then recall them again. Save what you can. Trishar nodded, quickly trying to send the abort order, but again the lines were clogged with bizarre streams of data. Rax watched in horror as more and more of the second wave disappeared. What did these humans want? They had not displayed any actual destructive beams or missiles, at least not in the conventional sense. They simply forced the Luramir ships to destroy themselves. Commander, Myra said, her expression grim, we are receiving a priority signal from Admiral Thovok. The Council is requesting an immediate status update. Rax swallowed. Patch it through. The main screen blinked, revealing Admiral Thovok's imposing figure in holographic detail. He wore the gilded uniform of the Council's highest echelons, his scaled visage lined with age and experience. The Admiral took one look at Rax's bridge, lighting flashing red with alerts, and narrowed his eyes. Commander Rax, explain these losses, Thovok demanded. Our sensors show that the second wave has failed. Rax forced himself to meet Thovok's gaze. Admiral, the humans have technology beyond what we anticipated. They've hijacked the guidance of our drop ships, forcing them to crash or drift aimlessly. Thovok's lip curled. Nonsense. They're a pre-FTL civilization. They cannot. Tell that to the two waves of drop ships we've lost, Rax snapped, voice trembling with suppressed rage. They have some method of infiltration into our systems. We can't identify the exact mechanism, but we've seen enough to confirm its effectiveness. Thovok glared. The Council did warn that Earth's inhabitants had a unique capacity for rapid adaptation, but we did not expect them to exceed Luramir encryption. Are you suggesting we retreat? Rax bristled at the very notion. Retreat from a civilization that can't even traverse its own solar system? He halted. Admitting they might have to retreat was unthinkable, but continuing this fiasco was equally dire. Admiral Thovok's expression hardened. Then unleash the ground forces in full. Send enough drop ships to overwhelm any interference. I'm authorizing you to deploy as many waves as necessary. Rax stared at him, stunned. Admiral, with all due respect, these first two waves were nothing short of catastrophic. If we push forward blindly, the casualties could be even more severe. Thovok hissed in annoyance. Commander, the Emperor demands Earth be conquered swiftly. We cannot lose face. The Council prepared nearly 10,000 warships for precisely this contingency. Use them, and the transmission ended, leaving Rax standing on his own bridge, reeling with indignation and confusion. He felt the gazes of his officers on him. It fell to him to salvage the operation. Summoning the last shreds of composure, he commanded, "Prepare a massive ground deployment. We will flood their planet with drop ships in multiple synchronized waves. If they jam one group, another will strike from a different angle." Officer Trishar cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, the second wave included some of our best infiltration craft. If we lose even more, we have no choice," Rax growled, ignoring the sinking feeling in his gut. "Admiral Thovok wants brute force, so brute force is what we'll deliver." The officers scattered to carry out his orders. Rax rubbed at the tension building in his temples. 2 waves gone, destroyed or captured by some cunning Earth-based trick, and now he was about to send a third, maybe a fourth. The scale of potential losses was horrifying. The Luramir Empire was powerful, but to lose this many ships in a single day to a species that had never even built a warp engine, it defied imagination. A beep sounded from his personal console. He glanced down, half expecting another hail from Admiral Thovok, but it was Myra's voice in a recorded message. Or rather, Myra was standing in the corner, quietly, but her console had cued an urgent note for him. "There's something else out there, Commander. Multiple sensor ghosts at the far edge of Earth's orbit. Possibly advanced cloaked vessels. The readings don't match anything in the database. Suggest immediate investigation." Rax signaled for Myra to approach. "You found something beyond Earth's capabilities?" She stepped forward, voice low to avoid distracting the rest of the bridge. "Commander, I've detected signatures that are not human. Not Luramir. They're too faint for definitive analysis, but it's as if something is observing us from just past the planet's outer satellite shell." He considered it. Could that be the reason Earth has developed such advanced defenses? External interference from another starfaring race. Myra nodded slowly. That would explain how they knew our language, how they overcame our encryption so swiftly. Rax swore under his breath. "I'll keep in mind. For now, we push ahead. Admiral Thovok would have my head if we halted without more concrete evidence." He turned back to the main displays, forcing his focus onto the third wave preparations. But the sense of unseen watchers clawed at his thoughts. When the third wave launched, the result was equally disastrous, if not worse. Different entry vectors, advanced jamming attempts, yet Earth countered them all with elegance. The humans had manipulated their own power grid to create targeted electromagnetic pulses that nullified entire squads. Some Luramir troops made it to the ground only to find themselves cut off, their suits flickering with incomplete data. Others were caught mid-descent in bizarre stasis beams that froze them in time, left to drop like inert objects once the effect ended. By the end of that fiasco, at least another 100 ships were gone. The survivors limped back into orbit, or crashed, or captured. The scale of losses was unimaginable. Hundreds of top-of-the-line drop ships destroyed without the defenders firing a single recognizable ballistic or energy weapon. They had turned Luramir technology against itself. "Commander," Myra said softly, "we can't keep doing this." Rax leaned heavily on the console. "And what alternative do we have?" The Admiral is clear in his orders. He gazed at the planet's surface. The swirling atmosphere looked maddeningly serene. Meanwhile, the evidence of Luramir defeat orbited in broken fragments. The bridge was filled with quiet tension, as if everyone feared to speak their thoughts. Then Trishar stiffened. "Commander, we have an incoming transmission from Earth again. It's General Clark." Rax's mouth twisted. "Put on." The viewer switched to Clark's composed face. "Commander Rax, I warned you. We do not want this conflict. But you continue to send waves of your people to die. Stand down. Leave. We will not allow you to take this planet." Rax inhaled. A savage retort hovered in his throat, but his pride was losing ground to an uncomfortable reality. "By what right do you claim such immunity, General Clark? Do you realize the Luramir Empire spans thousands of systems? We are unstoppable. You're only making your defeat more painful." For a moment, she studied him with calm eyes. "Commander Rax, this is not just about Earth's defenses. We have allies, ones you would do well to avoid provoking further. Please do not proceed. And who might these allies be? He demanded. But she ended the feed abruptly, leaving him with only speculation. Rax turned back to Myra. These sensor ghosts, could they be her allies? Myra nodded. It's possible. We still can't pin them down. They vanish every time we try to get a lock. Rax felt an unfamiliar chill. Another beep, an incoming transmission from Admiral Thovok. Summoning every ounce of composure, he answered. The Admiral appeared, evidently following the live data. Commander Rax, the Council is convening an emergency session. We have decided upon an all-out ground assault. You will dispatch wave after wave of drop ships until you establish a foothold. Do you understand? Rax tried to keep his voice steady. Admiral, with due respect, we've lost over 400 ships in less than a day to a planet that supposedly had no real defenses. Something else is going on here. The humans might be working with advanced aliens. Thovok cut him off. Conspiracy theories? I care nothing for them. We have 9,900 warships. Use them. That is an order. Rax swallowed the words he wanted to say and nodded tightly. Yes, Admiral. The screen went dark. After a long moment, the tension on the bridge felt like a physical weight pressing down on everyone. Commander, Myra ventured, if we proceed as they demand, we could lose thousands more. And I have a suspicion we're not just dealing with advanced technology. We might be dealing with something ancient, some galactic arrangement. Speak plainly, Rax snapped, though he regretted his harshness. She took a breath. Have you ever heard of the Galactic Accord? He scoffed. An old myth. A bedtime story about ancient alliances that protect certain planets from interference. The Empire declared that nonsense centuries ago. Maybe it's not nonsense, she insisted. We're seeing the effects of an unknown presence. This could be the manifestation of that so-called accord. And Earth could be a protected world. Rax hesitated. The notion was terrifying. If the accord was real, an alliance of unbelievably advanced civilizations, then the Empire risked not just a humiliating defeat, but possibly incurring the wrath of powers beyond their comprehension. Before he could formulate a response, the bridge lights dimmed, and a new alarm sounded. Commander, Trishar shouted, I'm picking up a massive gravitational disturbance near the outer edge of Earth's orbit. Something is appearing out of nowhere. On screen, Rax ordered. The view shifted to show a vessel of pure white, featureless, larger than any Luramir ship. It simply blinked into existence without the gravitational lensing or hyperspace signatures typical of Starship entry. The strangest part, no energy readings, no propulsion, no standard warp traces. It just was. A resonant voice flooded the bridge, speaking perfect Luramir. Attention, Luramir fleet. This is Observer Gyron of the Galactic Accord. You are in violation of the Protected Worlds Treaty. Cease your aggression immediately and withdraw from Earth's orbit. You have 1 standard hour to comply. Rax felt as if his blood had turned to ice. Even as a child, the phrase Galactic Accord had rung like a legend, something from the Empire's ancient past. He had never believed in it. Judging by the stunned faces of his officers, they hadn't either. He found his voice, though it felt weak. Observer Gyron, I am Commander Rax of the Luramir Empire. By what authority do you infringe on our rightful conquest? Earth is not recognized as a sovereign member of any alliance. The voice returned, unruffled. Earth is designated as a developing civilization under the protection of the Accord. According to the treaties your ancestors signed millennia ago, no member species shall interfere with the natural progression of a protected planet. Rax's mind reeled. The Luramir ancestors had, in many accounts, traveled widely, forging alliances that were lost to time. Could it be that they once swore an oath in some forgotten era? Another communication link opened. Admiral Thovok. His face was twisted in disbelief and fury. Commander Rax, do not yield. This is likely an elaborate ruse. We can easily crush a single ship. But behind Thovok's image, Rax could see the data streams from their sensors, showing multiple new anomalies at the system's edge, as if a fleet of these mysterious white vessels was materializing. Observer, Gyron spoke again. You have 1 hour to withdraw your fleet. The Accord is prepared to enforce the treaty. That is all. The comm line cut. In the hush that followed, Myra's voice trembled. Commander, I'm detecting dozens more vessels like that. They're surrounding us at multiple points. We can't track them. They appear and vanish at will. Admiral Thovok roared from the side channel. Stand your ground. The Emperor will not bow to phantoms. Rax turned toward Thovok's hologram. Admiral, we've already lost hundreds of ships to Earth alone. Now we face an entity that can appear out of nowhere. We must consider the possibility that the Accord is real. Thovok's features darkened. Commander, if you disobey orders, I will have you court-martialed. Launch the next wave. Rax stared at the unwavering Admiral, then at Myra, who gave him a look of desperation. Every instinct told him the situation was hopeless. Pride, fear, duty, they warred within him. He opened his mouth to respond, but the main viewer switched again to a new figure. This one was humanoid, clad in robes of impossible white, with a face that shimmered softly, making it difficult to gauge age or species. The being did not speak with Luramir words, but something more direct, a telepathic resonance that the ship's systems translated into crisp meaning. Luramir Empire, your ancestors once stood alongside us in forging the Accord. You have forgotten your own heritage. We stand ready to protect Earth. Withdraw now. A hush so profound followed that Rax heard his own heartbeat drumming in his ears. He realized that everything he knew about the unstoppable Luramir conquest was a lie, or, at best, a partial truth. The universe was older and deeper than the Empire's conquests could measure. The Council had grown arrogant, believing themselves lords of the galaxy while ignoring ancient pacts. Then Admiral Thovok's voice thundered through the comm once more. Commander, enough of this farce. Earth will fall. You will obey your Emperor, or you will face the consequences. Rax slowly shook his head, eyes flicking from the Admiral's projection to the silent watchers from the Accord. Admiral, permission to speak freely. Make it quick, Thovok snapped. Sir, continuing this invasion is suicidal. We have evidence that Earth has been protected all along. The powers behind this are beyond our comprehension. He breathed unsteadily. I recommend a strategic withdrawal. Thovok's anger rippled visibly. You dare? The Emperor entrusted you with 9,900 ships. Our forces are second to none. We will not cower before illusions. Abruptly, the entire starfield behind Admiral Thovok flickered. Observers from the Accord started to appear in numbers that defied logic. Some manifested as elongated vessels of pristine white, others as shimmering orbs of unknown composition. The sensor readouts on the bottom of the screen showed an exponential rise in anomalies. The Admiral hesitated, eyes widening. Commander, what? This must be a trick. Rax forced composure. Admiral, it's not a trick. This is real. We must obey. The Admiral's face contorted with frustration, but he remained silent for several painful seconds. Then, in a voice heavy with reluctance, he said, Very well, we will withdraw, for now. But the Council will bury this incident. Do you understand me, Commander Rax? Rax gave a short nod, relief and dread mixing in him. Yes, Admiral. The feed cut, leaving the vantage of Earth and the Accord watchers in stifling silence. Rax turned to his crew. Relay the withdrawal order fleet-wide. All operational ships are to leave Earth's orbit immediately. No more waves. A wave of quiet spread across the bridge. The war horns that had heralded conquest were now echoes of defeat. Within the hour, the Luramir fleet began to break formation, turning away from Earth and the floating, silent guardians. Rax stared at Earth one last time before he gave the final order to move out. He felt an odd pang of regret, not for failing in conquest, but for the needless loss of so many brave Luramir soldiers. They had been sacrificed to the Empire's arrogance. The white vessels of the Accord loomed at a distance, but did not fire or interfere further. They simply watched, ensuring compliance. Rax communications lit up with short-coded messages from battered squadrons confirming they were retreating, or from lost drop ships that were requesting rescue. The number of casualties was staggering. Of the 9,900 ships that had arrived to claim Earth, barely a fraction, maybe 8,000, were still flight-capable. Even then, some were severely damaged. The final tally would be determined later, once they regrouped far from this star system. When the Amaranth finally jumped to a safer rally point, well outside Earth's gravity well, Rax allowed himself a deep breath. The swirling planet was gone from view, replaced by the elongated spirals of hyperspace. They had escaped annihilation, but at what cost? He turned to the battered officers on the bridge. Begin a full damage assessment. Treat the wounded. We hold position here until the Admiral gives further orders. They all nodded, though their shoulders sagged. Hours later, Admiral Thovok summoned Rax and the remaining high officers. In a covert channel, the Admiral pronounced that all details regarding Earth and the Accord were to be classified under the highest secrecy. The official story would be environmental anomalies that rendered the invasion unfeasible. To speak otherwise would be to invite charges of treason. Rax stood in the briefing chamber, feeling his stomach twist. The Admiral fixed him with a pointed stare. "Commander, you will comply with this directive, or the Empire will see you as a threat to stability. Is that understood?" He forced a nod. "Understood, sir." The meeting ended. One by one, the other officers left, expressions haunted or stoic. Nobody wanted to challenge the official narrative. Nobody wanted to share the truth that the Empire had bumbled into a confrontation with powers it could not defeat. Rax returned to his quarters, a place usually reserved for quiet reflection. He sat at the small metal desk, the hum of the ventilation system accentuating the stillness. For a long time, he simply gazed at his own reflection in the polished surface. The reflection stared back, golden eyes shot with fatigue. He was torn. Everything he'd learned demanded that the Empire reevaluate its approach to conquest. If Earth was protected by an ancient alliance, how many other worlds might be? How many invasions had the Empire successfully carried out simply because the Accord chose not to intervene? Were they always being watched? He knew he could not voice these questions publicly. The Admiral would have him executed, or worse. And yet, to return home and pretend nothing had happened felt impossible. The losses were catastrophic. Thousands of Luramir warriors lay captured or dead on a planet that had never even built a warp drive. And in the end, it wasn't the humans alone who forced the Empire's hand, but the Watchers, the Accord, an age-old authority the Luramir had apparently abandoned or forgotten. Over the following days, the battered fleet limped back toward Luramir space. Repair ships tried to salvage half-ruined vessels. Morale teetered on the edge of mutiny. Every soldier had known that a pre-FTL world was supposed to be an easy conquest. The humiliating truth echoed in the hushed corridors, though none dared speak it openly. When they finally reached the designated rendezvous, Admiral Thovok addressed the entire command group. He repeated the official line. Earth was not worth the Empire's resources. The environment was too unpredictable for a successful operation. New directives would be formulated by the Council once they had time to analyze the data. Until then, all logs would remain top secret. Leaking the real story would mean certain death. Rax tried to bury his bitterness. He had done his duty, or so he told himself. Another part of him felt compelled to break the silence. But he was under constant surveillance. One misstep and his life was forfeit. Then, 3 weeks after their humiliating retreat, Rax vanished during a routine patrol. The official report stated his ship had collided with an asteroid, leaving no survivors. Whispers circulated among the officers that it was no accident, that the Council had arranged his disappearance to prevent any chance of him testifying about the fiasco at Earth. But something else happened. Around that same time, in a hidden diplomatic station orbiting a distant star, a Luramir figure arrived. He bore a distinctive slash across one scaled cheek and carried himself with a sardonic confidence. He said his name was Rax, once a commander in the Luramir Imperial Fleet. He spoke to the station staff with measured courtesy, explaining that he had come seeking the representative of the Galactic Accord. In a private chamber lined with luminous crystals, observer Gyron greeted him. "Commander Rax, I wonder how long before the Empire's illusion shattered. What is it you want here?" Rax stood tall, though a weariness ringed his eyes. "I want to ensure that no more worthless invasions are carried out on protected worlds. The Council can bury the truth, but someone has to stand up for reason." Observer Gyron regarded him with an enigmatic smile. "And you would defect from the Empire to assist us?" He exhaled. "If that's what it takes. I cannot stand by while the Luramir Empire continues blindly. Maybe your accord can persuade them to change peacefully." Gyron's gaze held centuries of wisdom. "You have stepped onto a challenging path, Rax. The accord is selective about its members." "Then test me," Rax said quietly. "I've seen what you can do, what the humans did to protect themselves. It opened my eyes. You were right about my ancestors. They once stood with you. I don't know if we can stand together again, but I want to try." The observer nodded. "Very well. Let's see if we can build new understandings from ancient treaties." Far from Earth, and far from the illusions the Empire upheld, the former Commander Rax felt a glimmer of purpose. Thousands of Luramir had died or gone missing in the disastrous invasion of Earth. Only a few survivors truly understood the deeper truth, that the galaxy was far more vast and mysterious than the Empire had ever admitted. He vowed that one day he would return to Luramir space, with the backing of the Accord, if necessary. He would speak the truth about Earth. He would testify that a small blue-green planet, seemingly insignificant, had withstood 9,900 ships and triumphed without firing a single conventional weapon. He would make certain that the story of Earth changed the course of galactic history, before countless more worlds were subjected to the arrogance of conquest. In time, the legend would spread. They sent 9,900 ships to conquer Earth. Only a few lived to tell the tale, and one of those few was determined that the tale would not fade into rumor, but become the catalyst for a new chapter in the Luramir Empire's destiny, one that might finally align with the ancient, half-forgotten ideals of cooperation and mutual respect, rather than unchallenged domination. For Earth, the crisis would fade into relative secrecy. General Ariella Clark continued her watch, knowing that the planet's official records would never openly acknowledge how close they had come to total invasion, nor the role of the Accord. Even the public of Earth would remain largely ignorant, attributing atmospheric anomalies to everyday phenomena. Only a small circle of top leaders grasped the magnitude of what had nearly happened, and what had ultimately saved them. And for the Accord, Earth was but one precious piece in a grand tapestry of protected worlds scattered across the galaxy, each with unique potential. The Watchers resumed their silent vigil, prepared to intervene again if the Luramir or any other empire dared to breach the ancient treaties. Thus, the story did not truly end with the Luramir fleet's retreat. It began anew with a quiet alliance forming in the shadows, with a commander who refused to remain silent, and with a small planet that had proven its worth in a cosmic game far beyond its technological scope. Earth would keep advancing, at its own pace, guided here and there by invisible guardians, forging its destiny among the stars, no longer quite as alone as it once seemed. For Commander Rax, the journey to redemption and revelation stretched out before him. He had left behind everything he knew, the rank, the authority, even his name among the Luramir High Command. He had chosen to walk a path that might unite old pacts and new realities, all because on a fateful day, the Luramir had sent 9,900 ships to conquer a world they deemed backward. In under a day, that assumption had been shattered forever. Someday, the truth would emerge in Luramir society. Someday, they would have to reckon with the knowledge that the Empire's expansions were subject to greater laws than they realized. Perhaps that day would bring war with the Accord, or perhaps it would bring an era of negotiation and peace. In either case, Rax intended to do everything in his power to keep more innocent lives from being thrown into the furnace of conquest. He was no hero. He had led the invasion, after all, but he could still do something to prevent a repeat of that tragedy. The Accord Watchers, like Gyron, seemed open to letting him try. In hushed corridors of that hidden station, he spoke with other unusual figures. Humans involved in the clandestine Earth Concord Liaison Project, emissaries from other species similarly rescued from near annihilation, and ancient beings who had watched the galaxy swirl for eons. Each had a story to tell about how the Accord had safeguarded them, about the treaties forged in epochs past, about the illusions under which many rising empires labored. Rax heard it all with solemn attention, each piece of knowledge forging a new perspective. The unstoppable Luramir, it turned out, were not unstoppable at all, and had never truly been alone in this cosmos. And so the rumor quietly spread across star systems, carried by hushed voices and whispered among contraband circles of knowledge. The day the unstoppable Luramir Empire came to Earth in unstoppable force, and left with unimaginable losses, was the day that proved the galaxy still belonged not to a single empire, but to a tapestry of ancient protections and agreements. Earth was protected. Other worlds might be as well. Conquest was no longer guaranteed. When faced with that fact, the Luramir Council scrambled to hold onto power, blacking out the entire Earth fiasco. But there were survivors, men and women who had escaped the carnage or been rescued by Earth, some of whom quietly leaked details to those who would listen. And there was Commander Rax, vanished and presumed dead, who soon emerged as the single voice willing to speak the truth to those beyond the Empire's shadow. He did not hold illusions that the Council would change overnight, but the seeds of transformation had been planted, and no empire can remain unchanged once it realizes it is not, in fact, the greatest force in existence. In the grand cosmic scale, Earth's victory might seem small, just a single world saved on a single day. Yet for the Luramir Empire, it was a turning point, a forced recognition that might eventually lead them onto a path of humility and cooperation, or else spark a confrontation with the Accord. For Earth, it was both a triumph and a warning. The galaxy was vast, and the planet's luck in having watchers and advanced hidden alliances might not always hold. They would have to keep developing, forging new understandings, and preparing for an era of open cosmic engagement. No official record in Luramir space would tell the real story, but in quiet corners of the cosmos, it was whispered as a cautionary tale, a testament to the surprising resilience of so-called primitive worlds. The refrain persisted among those who truly knew. They sent 9,900 ships to conquer Earth. Only a few lived to tell the tale. And the one who mattered most among those few was determined that their sacrifice would count for something. That no empire, Luramir or otherwise, would so casually cast entire fleets in a battle, ignorant of the watchers overhead. Thus the night sky over Earth returned to silence, broken only by the occasional flicker of starlight across leftover orbital debris. The battered remains of Luramir dropships were eventually retrieved or left to burn upon re-entry. The human population never fully learned how close they had come to invasion, though faint rumors circulated of strange lights in the sky and unusual power fluctuations. Official statements explained it all away as rare cosmic interference or meteorological phenomena. In time, Earth's leaders would meet with the Accord again, refining the protective protocols. They would also communicate with their unlikely new ally, Rax, once the tip of the Empire's spear, now ironically the one who might help keep that spear sheathed. And for the Luramir soldiers who had been stranded or captured on Earth, negotiations took place in secret to repatriate them, ensuring minimal further bloodshed. Some refused to leave, electing to remain, having seen firsthand that the humans possessed an uncanny mix of adaptability and empathy. For Commander Rax, each day was another step away from the rigid constraints of the Empire's worldview. He recalled vividly the mocking confidence he'd felt when first glimpsing Earth, a tiny planet he had believed would be conquered before the day was done. Those memories weighed on him as both shame and motivation. He had become a witness to the truth, and in a galaxy rife with conflict and cover-ups, witnesses of the truth were desperately needed. Now, he stood upon the threshold of possibilities. Perhaps one day, the Luramir Council would demand retribution, try again to seize Earth or another protected world. Perhaps the Empire would set its sights on the Accord itself. But with each passing moment, the odds shifted. Rumors of Earth's improbable stand and the Accord's intervention spread quietly throughout Luramir territory, sowing doubts in the minds of officers, governors, and even the populace. If enough seeds of doubt took root, the next conquest order might be met with hesitation, perhaps enough to break the cycle of endless expansion. And so the story wove on, threads of caution and of hope binding together. Though few official logs mentioned it, in hidden networks it was known. Earth had shown a different way, an example of cunning defense and steadfast alliances that foiled an empire's illusions. Many died on that day of invasion, yet their sacrifice became a fulcrum on which the future might pivot. As for the humans, they carried on with their lives, mostly unaware of how history had just bent in their favor. A handful of leaders and scientists retained the knowledge, guiding Earth's slow climb to the stars with more caution, more readiness for the truths that lay beyond. Yes, they had help from an ancient cosmic order, but they also possessed an innate knack for innovation that had begun turning the tables even before the Accord revealed itself. Years later, in a quiet corridor of an Accord observation station, Rax paused before a wide window that overlooked a swirling nebula in the distance. He thought of Earth's gentle blues and greens, so deceptively docile. He thought of the thousands of proud Luramir who had gone to conquer and never returned. He murmured a small vow. Let me ensure no more such tragedies occur. Let me be the one to remind the Empire of what it has forgotten. Behind him, a voice spoke softly, a human scientist who had come to discuss the next stage of Earth's hidden defense upgrades. Rax turned, a thoughtful expression on his face, and nodded. Together, they walked deeper into the station's halls, forging an alliance that did not appear in any Luramir record, but which held the potential to spare countless worlds from the ravages of blind conquest. And somewhere, Earth carried on spinning, oblivious to the grand cosmic dealings that had briefly cast it as the center of a silent war. The majority of humans slept peacefully at night, never knowing that the largest fleet the Luramir Empire had ever dispatched against a pre-FTL world had hung in orbit for that one terrifying day, 9,900 ships strong, and then vanished as if they had never been. Only a few lived to tell the tale, but those few would make sure it was never truly forgotten. They laughed when Silas Jameson first stepped off the transport. The docking bay at the Galactic Military Institute hung in low orbit above the shimmering golden curve of Orius 9. This station was a colossal array of steel, energy shielding, and high-tech scaffolding, teeming with a rainbow of alien species. Within moments of his arrival, Silas could feel the stares of onlookers who spotted his distinctly human features. A few watchers murmured among themselves in hushed tones that didn't quite hide their amusement. By the time he reached the first security checkpoint, he'd heard the words, "the human experiment," whispered no fewer than 5 times. Still, he kept his posture straight and his gaze steady. The chatter did sting, but he wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of seeing him upset. His acceptance letter had arrived on Earth only 3 months prior, delivered with all the formality the galaxy's most renowned military academy could muster. Humans were newcomers in the Alliance, just over 50 years of membership. Truthfully, Earth was still considered an underdog, widely regarded as physically inferior and lagging in advanced technologies. Silas knew that he was here partly as a political token, partly as an experiment to see whether humans could handle the rigorous environment of the Institute. But he also carried a deep conviction that he could prove something not only for himself but for his entire planet. He passed through the admission corridor, took a moment to appreciate the advanced scanning devices that flickered with pale blue beams, and tried to quell the tight, knot forming in his stomach. His reflection in the polished metal caught his eye, a lean figure, neither tall nor short, with short black hair and gray eyes that mirrored a calm determination he didn't always feel. The uniform he wore, freshly issued for all new cadets, felt too crisp, stiff at the shoulders. He'd read about gravity differentials, but actually feeling it was different, Aureus IX's orbit gave the station artificially customized gravity. Every few steps, it seemed to shift as he walked from one corridor to another, calibrated to accommodate different species. By the time he reached the main intake hall, he was among a cluster of fellow first cycle cadets. Four-armed Taurans conversed in fluid gestures. A trio of tall, willowy Ildrins blinked with luminous eyes as they scanned the environment, and a broad-shouldered Marduk with mottled gray skin towered over them all. As soon as Silas approached, the Marduk let out a snort, baring sharp teeth in a derisive grin. "Ah," the big alien rumbled. "I thought humans were a myth. Didn't realize they let children enroll." Silas felt the heat rising in his cheeks. "I'm not a myth," he replied carefully, refusing to look away. "My name's Silas Jameson. Earth." The Marduk let out a harsh chuckle. "Vandal Vox," he said, pounding a fist against his armored chest. "Top of my class in the pre-conscription program. Strongest in my brood. I hope you last a few days, at least. I'd hate for your species' first impression to be an immediate washout." Before Silas could answer, a melodic voice cut in. "You're hardly being hospitable, Vandal. We've only just arrived." The speaker was a slender female cadet with violet-blue skin and glistening eyes that reflected every hue in the corridor's light. She had a regal bearing, her head held high, and something about her smooth movements suggested that she might be from the Alathir species, renowned for their vocal abilities and subtle empathic talents. Vandal rolled his shoulders. "I'm just giving him a friendly welcome," he growled. The Alathir turned her gaze to Silas and offered a small, gracious bow. "I'm Zayalun. Please don't mind Vandal. He's intense, but if you manage to get past his barking, there's some loyalty in there. More than you'll find in some other species," Vandal muttered. Zaya pretended not to hear. Her luminous eyes took in Silas's uniform. "And you must be the human everyone's talking about." "I guess so," Silas said with a tentative smile. "Nice to meet you." "Good luck," Zaya replied. It was oddly sincere. Then she moved on toward one of the orientation stations, leaving Silas and Vandal in a tense silence. After a moment, Vandal snorted again and wandered off to see which squad assignment he'd been given. Silas exhaled slowly, realizing he'd been holding his breath. He retrieved his assigned dorm number from one of the automated terminals and set off, noticing that every so often, heads turned to stare at him as he passed. The hush that followed reminded him that, to these people, he was a curiosity and little more. The dormitory block was a massive hallway leading to sets of curved doors, each door labeled with a block number and occupant names. A flick of Silas's ID card opened his assigned quarters. To his relief, it was small but private. This was unusual for first cycle cadets who often shared multi-bunk rooms. Perhaps the Institute's leadership had decided that isolating the single human was better than forcing him to adapt to someone else's atmospheric preferences. He set down his bag, took a moment to gather his nerves, and began scanning his welcome packet. His first official briefing, orientation, a series of basic physical tests, and a schedule of essential classes in both theoretical and practical warfare. Sleep came in fitful bursts that night. Silas's mind replayed the half-mocking stares, the low chuckles, the remarks about humans being the experiment. He wondered if he truly had what it took to be here. His acceptance on Earth had hinged on top marks and limited local military training, but that was a far cry from what the rest of the galaxy considered standard. Yet, he refused to let doubts suffocate him. After all, the Institute had invited him, right? Some part of them believed Earth could produce a capable soldier. He planned to prove them right. The next morning, he reported to the physical training wing for the first set of evaluations. It was a sprawling complex of obstacle courses, adjustable gravity fields, and advanced sensor grids that recorded every heartbeat, respiration, and muscle movement. Instructor drones hovered overhead, capturing data from every angle. Silas found himself alongside 24 other cadets, each with different physiques, different gravitational tolerances, different inherent abilities. He noticed that the Alathir, like Zaya, were graceful and swift. The Taurans used their forearms with practice coordination, and the Mardoks, including Vandal, relied on brute strength. Welcome to your initial PT assessment, called out a deep, resonant voice. A figure strode forth, Trung Ta Grawl Shelvak, if Silas recalled the name correctly. He was tall, with a sleek exoskeleton and proud bearing. We're not here to break records yet. We're here to see where you stand so we can shape your training. The Institute demands nothing short of excellence, and we do not tolerate those who lack discipline. The first test was a simple run. Simple except for the automated gravity shifts every 100 meters. Silas had prepared for standard Earth gravity, but the track kept adjusting from 0.8 Earth standard to 1.3, sometimes dropping down to near weightlessness. The others leaped or bounded through with the advantage of their physiology. Silas found himself huffing, muscles straining harder than he expected. 3 laps in, he was lagging. A Tauren loped by, flashing a pitying glance. Vandal passed him with a sneer. Silas grit his teeth, forced himself to keep going. By the time the run finished, he was gasping in the back third of the group. Next came the strength test, lifting standardized weights calibrated to each species baseline. He did all right, middle of the road for a human of his size. But in a galaxy of beings who could tear metal plating with their bare hands, it didn't stand out. He caught up with Orhel TRRUK, a Tyros whose scaly skin reflected the overhead lights in shifting shades of green and silver. Orhel was in the same test cluster, seemingly more comfortable with the multi-gravity environment, but no towering giant like Vandal. Not a great start, huh? Silas said with a self-deprecating breath. Don't look at me, Orhel replied, though not unkindly. I'm just glad I didn't pass out. My lungs are adapted for a narrow range of oxygen partial pressure, and these adjustments are messing with me. Silas allowed himself a small grin. So, I'm not the only one feeling out of my depth. We all are, I think, Orhel said, tapping the small device on his wrist that displayed dozens of metrics: heart rate, lactic acid levels, atmospheric stats. Anyway, there's more than brute strength to soldiering. Tyros used to be dismissed as runts among the starfaring species, but we proved ourselves with engineering and cunning. That's good to hear, Silas said. I'll be counting on cunning. They shared a faint smile, the beginning of a fragile camaraderie. After lunch, an experience in which Silas nearly grabbed a food item labeled toxic to humans, they all gathered for theoretical warfare class. The instructor, Captain Yurna Vespin, was a wiry figure who paced the front of the auditorium as she spoke. Holographic maps and data screens shimmered around her. She asked the class to analyze a hypothetical conflict scenario involving 3 star systems and limited alliance fleets. Most cadets offered straightforward solutions: overwhelm System X, hold System Y, etc. Silas raised his hand. In that scenario, isn't System Y nearly impossible to defend? What if we intentionally make it look weaker to lure the enemy, then strike them at System Z from 2 flanks? Yurna's eyebrows rose slightly. That's an unconventional approach, more deception-based. Silas shrugged. On Earth, we had a history of asymmetric warfare. When outmatched, we used illusions, ambushes, false signals. We leveraged cunning to turn the tide. He could feel the stares, some intrigued, others dismissive. But Yurna smiled. Interesting. Keep thinking like that, Cadet Jameson. After class, as the students filed out, Zaya caught up to him. That was an insightful tactic, she said. You must have studied your people's history thoroughly. Yeah, we've had plenty of wars on Earth, for better or worse. I'm just trying to apply what I know. Zaya's eyes seemed to sparkle. Knowledge of different forms of conflict is valuable. Most species here rely on their inherent advantages. You rely on something else. Silas tried to interpret her tone, but Alathyr expressions were hard to read for a human. He simply nodded. I hope so. Word spread quickly that the human had offered an unusual solution in tactical class, and while some cadets found it intriguing, others scoffed, calling it a coward's approach, especially those from warrior-based cultures who prided direct confrontation. Vandal, of course, was among them. He didn't pass up any opportunity to sneer at Silas in the corridors, going so far as to shoulder-check him in the cafeteria line. Careful with your illusions, Vandal growled. They might work on a drone, but they won't help you on the real battlefield when you're face-to-face with an enemy who can crush your skull. Silas clenched his jaw but didn't retort. He'd resolved not to escalate tension needlessly. The next day, it was time for the official combat score evaluations, the main event that everyone had been talking about. The Institute's storied Crucible Arena was like something out of myth. A huge virtual physical hybrid environment where powerful AI systems crafted a battlefield tailored to each cadet's species and skill set. Everyone's performance would be recorded, and numeric combat score would be assigned, factoring in aim, reflexes, strategy, endurance, and synergy under stress. Cadets lined up in the observation area, watching as the first participants took their turns against an array of simulation drones and environment hazards. The area reconfigured for each cadet. Vandal was one of the first. His arena shaped itself into a rugged canyon, gravity a notch above standard. The drones appeared, and Vandal tore into them with raw ferocity, launching himself forward and smashing them with fists that seemed unstoppable. Even from behind the safety of the observation window, Silas felt the thunderous impact of the Marduk's blows. Within minutes, the final drone lay in a smoking heap. Vandal's combat score flashed on the overhead screen, near the top percentile. Cheers and exclamations rang out. Vandal left the arena with a triumphant grin. One by one, other cadets entered. Some soared with mechanical wings or telekinetic lifts. Others used advanced shielding tech or acidic blasts, depending on their species. Scores varied, from moderately high to unimpressive. Then came Zaya's turn. Her environment became a labyrinth of reflective walls, and the drones were stealth-focused. She moved with eerie grace, anticipating attacks with split-second dodges. Her finishing blow involved channeling some kind of harmonic disruptor through her voice, destabilizing the drone's sensors. Her final score was high, but not as high as Vandal's. She exited without fanfare, though Silas saw her eyes glow with satisfaction. Then Silas's name was called. He swallowed hard, stepping onto the platform that lowered him into the center of the arena. The walls lit up, scanning his physiology, searching for the correct environment. He braced himself, uncertain what the AI would choose. When the scan finished, the environment shimmered into something reminiscent of an old urban war zone. Half-collapsed buildings, scorch marks on the pavement, random piles of debris. From overhead speakers, the cold voice of the controlling AI intoned. Commencing scenario for Cadet Silas Jameson, species, human. 4 combat drones materialized, each armed with plasma rifles and advanced scanning capabilities. Silas's heart hammered. He was used to being overshadowed physically, but these drones were faster, stronger, and more robust than anything on Earth. He had a standard-issue sidearm and the cover the environment provided. That was it. The first drone fired, sending a scorching bolt that lanced the air beside Silas's head as he dove behind a chunk of concrete. He had to think. They were coordinating through a shared AI link, moving together to flush him out or corner him. He popped out just enough to take a quick shot, then darted behind new cover. The drone easily deflected his blast. He took a breath, forcing himself to remain calm. It wasn't about brute force. He needed to exploit a pattern. Every time he shot from cover, they adjusted. That adjustment could be predicted if he gave them consistent data. So he tried a seemingly disorganized dance, leaning out to shoot from random angles, sprinting to the left, only to double back. The drones tried to recalculate, dividing their angles of fire. After a few more feints, he slipped behind a half-standing wall. As expected, the drones split into pairs, each pair attempting to flank him. Silas quickly studied the terrain. There was an unstable support beam overhead. If he could time his next shot, maybe the resulting debris would do some damage. Sure enough, the drones advanced precisely where he wanted them. He took aim at the beam, fired a blast that brought it crashing down. One drone got pinned by the collapsing structure. The second pair dashed in from the other side, only to find that Silas had scrambled out of sight. He circled around, used the environment as cover, and fired an angled shot that ricocheted off a reflective scrap of metal, striking a drone from behind. The final drone whirled, scanning frantically and Silas rushed forward, slid across debris, snatched a leftover rifle from a downed drone, then blasted the last one with a near point-blank shot. A hush settled as the environment flickered into standby mode. Silas's breath came in ragged gulps, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Over the overhead speakers, the AI announced, "Simulation complete. Calculating combat score." In the observation deck, no one made a sound. Then the big screen flashed a set of numbers. High, startlingly high. Silas had scored not just in the upper bracket, but rivaling Vandal's record, perhaps even surpassing it by a fraction. The hush broke into an astonished buzz. Moments later, Silas emerged from the arena to a sea of stares. Some were impressed, some were skeptical, and many were simply in disbelief. Vandal's face twisted into a scowl. "That can't be right," he muttered. "He cheated somehow. The simulation must have glitched." Instructor Shellvack's gaze flicked between the data readout and Silas. "No errors detected," he said. "It appears your tactics were highly effective, Cadet Jameson." Silas wiped sweat from his brow, nearly speechless, but managed a small nod. He felt more than saw the sudden shift in atmosphere. The ones who had mocked him before didn't laugh now. A wave of relief mingled with lingering nerves. He'd proven humans could do more than cower behind advanced species. In the days that followed, rumors about Silas's performance spread rapidly. Some cadets came forward to congratulate him or ask how he'd analyzed the drones so quickly. Others, especially those with warrior traditions, fumed, calling it dishonorable to rely on tricks. Silas tried to keep his head down, but it was impossible not to notice the polarized reactions he received. Zaya offered him a few kind words, curious about how asymmetric warfare had shaped his worldview, while Orhel stuck by him loyally, praising his quick thinking. Vandal, though, became more openly hostile. Twice, Silas nearly got into physical altercations with him in the corridors. Only the presence of instructors stopped an outright brawl. Vandal seemed convinced that Silas was destroying the integrity of combat with his cowardly illusions. Silas heard the word coward thrown around more than once. It was in that tense climate that their squad was called up for a short field deployment. The Institute required all cadets to complete at least one real-world security mission. The assignment was a routine rotation at a Frontier Alliance outpost on a planet called Mira 2. The outpost served as a diplomatic station for local species and was known for occasional raider attacks. The cadets would be supervised by a mid-ranking officer, providing them with practical experience in maintaining a defensive perimeter and coordinating with local authorities. Silas was assigned to the same team as Vandal, Zaya, Orhel, and a few others he only knew in passing. The mid-ranking officer, Lieutenant Reza, was a stoic Zalarian with a calm demeanor and little inclination to micromanage the cadets. They arrived on Mira, 2 by dropship, stepping out onto the dusty, wind-swept terrain that stretched for miles under a pale red sky. The outpost itself was modest, prefabricated metal walls, a small central command tower, and a hangar for supply transports. Local farmers and traders occasionally visited, but it was far from a bustling settlement. The first day was uneventful. They ran routine patrols, checked security systems, and occasionally had to wave off curious reptilian wildlife from wandering too close to the fence. That changed abruptly on the second day. Silas was halfway through a perimeter check with Orhel when an alarm began blaring, an eerie shrill cry that echoed across the outpost. Over comms, he heard the frantic voice of Lieutenant Reza. "All units, unauthorized vessels have landed on the North Ridge. Possible raider incursion. Prepare defensive measures." Silas felt his heartbeat spike. It was real now. No simulation. No controlled environment. This was an actual threat with lethal consequences. He sprinted back, toward the outpost gate, meeting up with Vandal, Zaya, and a cluster of other cadets. The main gates were sealed. Automated turrets hummed in readiness. From the north, plumes of dust rose in the distance, and shapes emerged. Armored raider craft, crudely modified but formidable. Within minutes, energy blasts pelted the outpost's shield generator. The shield flickered dangerously. We gotta hold them off until reinforcements arrive, Lieutenant Reza said, his voice calm but urgent. Comms are patchy out here. We sent a distress signal. Could be hours or more before help comes. Vandal growled in anticipation. Let's take the fight to them. Out of the question, Reza snapped. They have us outnumbered, and we can't risk open ground. We maintain the perimeter, keep them from breaching. Silas studied the outpost's readouts. The shield generator was taking heavy fire. Once it went down, the raiders would swarm inside. We can't just sit and get pounded, he said to Orhel. Is there a way to disrupt their coordination? Orhel's scales reflected concern. They're using local comm relays, no doubt. If I can get into the outpost substation, maybe I can jam them or feed false signals. Let's do it, Silas said, already running across the courtyard as blasts shook the ground. Zaya fell in step behind them, volunteering to keep watch with a plasma rifle. Vandal, seeing the three of them band together, snorted. Running around with your illusions again, Silas? The enemy's out there, not in some computer system. You want to charge out there alone, be my guest, Silas bit back, frustration flaring. But you'll be killed before you can close the distance. We need another approach. Vandal's jaw tightened. For a moment, Silas thought the Marduk might ignore him. But the next explosion rattled the wall, and Lieutenant Reza shouted for them to coordinate. Vandal cursed under his breath and grunted. Fine, I'll provide cover. They reached the small substation building, crouching behind crates while Orhel hooked up his multi-interface device. The console displayed readouts of the local area. The raiders had multiple squads forming a perimeter outside the shield. If they made a coordinated push, the cadets would be overwhelmed. Zaya scanned the horizon. We've got about 20 raiders out there, heavily armed. Give me 3 minutes, Orhel said, rapidly typing. I'll try to broadcast false instructions on their frequencies. Vandal paced, clutching his weapon tight. This is not how we fight. We should show them fearlessness. Meet them with strength. This is how we stay alive, Silas said, biting back sharper words. Your strength is important. Just hold them off for a little while longer. We don't have a manpower to wage an open battle. Another barrage hit. The shield generator sputtered. A section of the perimeter fence blew open. A handful of raiders in battered combat suits spilled through, guns blazing. Vandal roared and charged forward, intercepting them before they could advance deeper. Zaya darted to an elevated vantage, picking off one raider with a precise plasma shot. Meanwhile, Silas crouched by Orhel's side. The console beeped. Orhel's eyes flashed. I'm in. Feeding them new orders. Huh. Their scanners are now receiving false signals of a second allied force to the west. Silas peered at the readout. So maybe half of them will break off to check it out, hopefully. Gunfire erupted closer this time. Silas risked a glance around the crate. Vandal was locked in hand-to-hand combat with a raider who wielded a long, jagged blade. The Marduk's raw power slammed the attacker into the ground. Another shot from behind forced Vandal to duck. Zaya's voice crackled over the comm. They're redirecting some of their units. It's working, but the ones already inside the fence are still pushing. Silas nodded to Orhel. Stay here, keep it up. Then he scrambled over the debris to take up position near Vandal, providing covering fire. Vandal shot him a glare, but nodded in grudging acknowledgement of the help. Their combined efforts forced the raiders to seek cover behind a half-destroyed cargo truck. A sudden clang from behind startled Silas. He whirled to see a new group of raiders forcing an auxiliary hatch. One of them carried a device that looked ominously like an EMP generator. If they triggered that inside, it would wipe out half the outpost defenses in one go. Silas made a snap decision. Vandal, hold them off here. What? Vandal shouted, as another blast impacted the nearby wall. I'm about to stop that EMP, Silas said. Zaya with me? She confirmed, her voice steady. Silas sprinted along the courtyard's outer rim, weaving between rubble. Zaya followed, occasionally firing at the raiders to keep them pinned. They had the advantage of partial walls and corners, though it was nerve-wracking hearing stray beams sizzle past. They reached the auxiliary hatch just as the raider, with the EMP device, was about to enter. Silas tackled him from the side, knocking the device out of the raider's hands. The attacker, bigger and heavier, slammed a forearm across Silas's face. Pain exploded in Silas's jaw, and he staggered, narrowly dodging a follow-up strike. Zaya took a careful shot that forced the raider to dive away, but another stepped into the fight. Silas recovered enough to grab the EMP device. He realized if he pressed the wrong button, it might detonate prematurely and take out the outpost electronics. He quickly slid it behind him, away from the immediate scramble. "Careful," Zaya warned. Silas ducked a wild swing, used the momentum to trip the attacker, and jabbed an elbow into the raider's side. He was no super soldier, but he'd trained enough to hold his own with technique and cunning. Zaya shot the second one in the leg, forcing a retreat. Together, they seized the device, dragging it inside the outpost for safekeeping, then sealing the hatch behind them. Meanwhile, from across the yard, Silas could see the flickers of muzzle flashes where Vandal was fighting. A thunderous crash signaled the shield generator's final sputter. Without the shield, more raiders would pour in. Orhel's false signals had lured some away, but the rest remained. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the ground. Silas stumbled. Over the comm, Lieutenant Rez's voice cracked with static. "They've targeted the command tower. We've lost remote turret control. Estimated time for reinforcements. Unknown." Silas's thoughts whirled. This outpost was on the verge of being overrun. The raiders were disorganized thanks to the jamming, but that only bought a little time. He realized they needed a more decisive action, something to break the assault for good. He sprinted back to Orhel, who was still tapping frantically at the substation console. "Any chance we can rig a timed overload of the perimeter fence once they try to breach a critical point?" Orhel blinked. "That's risky. We can't be sure it won't blow half of us up, too." Silas mentally mapped the outpost. "We do it in a controlled area, funnel them. If we can lure the majority through that breach, we can set it to overload after we get out of range." Zaya arrived, panting, scanning the data screens. "I can sense their confusion, but they're regrouping near the southwestern gate." Vandal tore around a corner, blood trickling from a cut above his eyebrow, breathing hard. "We can't hold them all. Tell me there's a plan besides typing on a console." Silas explained quickly, ignoring Vandal's snide tone. They'd funnel the raiders into the southwestern zone with a purposeful retreat, then blow the fence or cause a short energy surge to incapacitate as many as possible. It was better than letting them keep battering the defenses one section at a time. Vandal stared at him, shoulders heaving. "You want us to retreat deeper into the outpost, pretend to be losing ground, and then fry them with an overload?" "Yeah, something like that," Silas said. "Unless you've got a better idea." Vandal's nostrils flared. "Fine, but don't expect me to run from these scum for long." It all happened in a blur. Under the ruse of a desperate fallback, the cadets pulled back from various vantage points, letting the southwestern gate appear to be the only route of retreat. The raiders took the bait, advancing in a tight group. Meanwhile, Orhel rigged the fence capacitor, setting it to discharge an immense current once the infiltration numbers exceeded a certain threshold. Silas found himself behind a broken barricade, firing potshots at the raiders as they poured through. Vandal was near him, alternating between raging melee attacks and covering blasts. Zaya and other cadets made sure no one flanked them from behind. Then Orhel's voice came over the comm. "They're in position. I'm triggering the overload now." A brilliant flash lit up the sky. Lightning-like arcs danced across the fence segments, surging through the unsuspecting raiders who had crossed the threshold. Their screams mixed with the deafening crackle of electricity. The wave of energy shorted out multiple devices, including some of the raiders' vehicles. When the brightness died down, the southwestern breach was littered with incapacitated or disoriented attackers. Those who weren't neutralized fled in terror, believing a new wave of defenders had arrived. Silas and Vandal stood side by side, panting, scanning for any remaining threats. Zaya's voice sounded shakily. "I think that did it. They're retreating." The battered outpost was quiet, save for the crackle of flame and sparks from damaged systems. After ensuring there were no more hidden raiders, the cadets began rescue efforts for the wounded. A handful of outpost personnel had suffered injuries, but no one was killed. Reinforcements arrived later, finding the cadets exhausted but victorious. Lieutenant Reza, though injured himself, mustered enough strength to offer a curt nod of respect to Silas and the rest of the group. "Well done," he said simply. "That was a precarious situation, and you all adapted." In the aftermath, the tension between Silas and Vandal shifted. The Marduk approached him while they waited for medical checkups. "You fought well," Vandal said, his tone still gruff. "And your plan saved a lot of lives." Silas noticed the bruise forming on Vandal's chin. "Same to you. If you hadn't engaged them so fiercely, I might never have had time to sabotage that EMP or rig the fence." Vandal gave a short laugh. "Maybe we can be rivals instead of enemies, Jameson. I can't say I like your sneaky strategies, but I can't deny they get results." Silas nodded. He'd take that. It was progress. When they returned to the Institute, news of the successful defense spread quickly. Some of the more traditional instructors expressed mild disapproval that the cadets had used deceptive tactics, but the overall sentiment was that their adaptability had saved the outpost from a far worse fate. During a debrief in the staff hall, a general staff board grilled Silas on the details, wanting to know precisely how he'd coordinated illusions and sabotage. He explained Earth's long history of warfare driven by cunning, from ancient ambushes to modern infiltration. Zaya and Orhel chimed in to credit Silas with crucial decisions. Vandal, standing off to one side with his arms folded, gave the occasional affirmative nod as the story was told. That evening, the official results of the outpost mission were announced. The Institute recognized the squad's bravery, though they also issued warnings about reckless improvisation. Regardless, Silas's name came up repeatedly as the strategist who orchestrated many of the crucial moves. Already, whispers began about whether the human might be better at actual combat than people realized. The final days of the cycle were a whirlwind. Silas, now with a proven track record, found himself invited to advanced tactical discussions with instructors like Captain Yurnavespin, who wanted to incorporate some of his offbeat methods into standard training modules. Orhel joined him, eager to demonstrate how synergy between hacking and misdirection could supplement brute force. Zaya expressed interest in weaving empathic perception into these plans, opening the door to integrated strategies that the galaxy's armies had rarely embraced. Vandal, for his part, didn't become Silas's friend in the traditional sense, but he at least stopped tormenting him and even grudgingly admitted that Earth's approach to war was a puzzle worth studying. "I won't lie," Vandal told Silas in one hallway encounter, "I still think you humans are fragile, but you use your minds in ways that compensate. I can respect that." On the day of the official awards ceremony, the Grand Hall of the Institute was filled with cadets, faculty, and staff. Silas stood in formation alongside Orhel, Zaya, and the others who deployed to Mira too. Everyone wore formal dress uniforms. The commandant of the Institute delivered a speech. "Today we commend those who serve on Mira, too, and acted decisively. The successful defense came about not through uniform, predictable measures, but through a willingness to adapt and innovate. This is precisely what we seek to foster here, discipline paired with creativity, a synergy of the best each species brings. Cadet Silas Jameson, you've earned distinction among your peers, not only in the crucible arena, but in a true battle for lives." Some scattered applause echoed. Silas wasn't sure if the entire crowd embraced him, but the recognition felt genuine enough. When the ceremony ended, Orhel and Zaya approached. Zaya's eyes glimmered with that subtle radiance. "Congratulations, Silas," she said. "Quite a journey from the day you arrived. You saved a lot of people out there," Orhel chimed in, tapping the side of his data visor. "And maybe introduce some new thinking. The instructors have asked if I'd help incorporate some of your infiltration tactics into the next simulation cycles." "Wait, seriously?" Silas asked, half-dazed. Orhel grinned. "They're calling it mixed approach training." "You, me, and Zaya can help them design new scenarios. You game. Silas felt an uncharacteristic warmth blossom in his chest. Absolutely. Vandal strolled up, hands clasped behind his back. He eyed Silas for a moment, as if measuring him once more. Then he offered a short nod. Human, I appreciate that you saved my hide on Mira, too. I'd have done the same for you, of course. I know, Silas replied. I appreciate it, too. Vandal lifted his chin. I suppose you'll be off to advanced classes. Don't get soft. I'm still aiming to outscore you in the next big test. Silas smirked. Bring it on. Competition only makes us better. And maybe that was the best resolution they could have. A mutual, if reluctant, respect tempered by rivalry. Later that night, Silas wandered the main promenade deck, gazing out of the large observation window at Orius 9 far below. It was a stunning view, swirling golden clouds, flickers of a ring system glinting in the star's light. The complexities of the galaxy lay spread before him. Countless worlds, countless species, countless viewpoints. He reflected on the day he arrived, weighed down by stares and dismissive laughter. Then, he remembered the moment he'd stepped out of the Crucible arena with an unheard-of combat score. He recalled the real terror of seeing actual raiders storm an outpost, and how cunning, cooperation, and a dash of bravery had turned the tide. He replayed in his head the look on Vandal's face when forced to concede that raw muscle wasn't everything. And most of all, he remembered that ear-splitting alarm on Mira, too, the thrill of orchestrating a plan that saved lives. Now the Institute recognized him not as a passive experiment, but as a cadet with unusual insights. He would do everything in his power to keep up that momentum. Earth needed a representative they could be proud of. More than that, the galaxy needed to see the humans, despite their perceived fragility, had something vital to contribute. Adaptability was a survival trait, one that Earth's environment had fostered through millennia of challenges. When he finally returned to his dorm, he stepped inside and placed his uniform jacket on the bed. Tomorrow, training would continue, advanced tactics classes would begin, and challenges from every corner of the galaxy would arise. But he no longer felt like an outsider. Through conflict, he had found his place. So, yes, they had laughed at the human cadet. Many still might. But now, after seeing his combat scores, after seeing him in actual combat, they were no longer quite so sure Earth was irrelevant. And as Silas drifted into a deep sleep, his body and mind exhausted, he felt a renewed confidence. The next chapter of his journey, and humanity's story in the stars, was only just beginning.